Now, if you've already seen the previous video that I did on the war between O-Block and Tookaville, then feel free to skip this part of the video. That video covered the ongoing back and forth between O-Block and the street crews coming out of 63rd between the years of 2010 and 2014. Tookaville is another name of the STL EBT sets on 63rd, with the name Tookaville itself being derived from another young man from that area who was sadly gunned down as a teenager by the name Tooka. You've likely heard his name being dissed numerous times in songs by rappers from O-Block. In fact, as part of the trend of a block being renamed after a young man who lost their life in the war, O-Block wasn't always called O-Block. It actually used to be called Wick City, which stood for Wild, Insane and Crazy. But just like Tookaville, Wick City ended up being renamed O-Block after the murder of young member O.D. Perry. So let's take a quick look back at that video to get up to speed on how the early days of this feud begun, so that we can remember some of the names of those who lost their lives in the early days of this beef, with their memory contributing to the careers of King Von, FBG Duck and their respective crews. Now, it's hard to find one cataclysmic event that has caused the enormous wave of beef between these two groups. What seems to be the reality is that some of this beef dates all the way back to high school days, where members from these opposing areas would get into pretty basic schoolyard fights. However, these small, local schoolyard beefs would unfortunately escalate into deadly violence when those involved became old enough to get guns. But all the way back in the early 2010s, King Von had been repping his BD affiliation on social media to the fullest, holding down the blocks of Parkway and showing love to his gang for the entire world to see.
Yeah, bitch. Yeah.
Other big names in the Wick City BD set include feared supposed shooters like HK and J Money or J Munna. Then of course there's King Von's beloved BD bro T Roy, who is apparently a bit of a dynamic duo along with Von, with the close bond between these two becoming very relevant later in the story. And in fact, this is the exact reason why even right up until his death in 2020, King Von used to go by the name V-Roy on Twitter. And the fact that he comes from Wick City is why his Twitter handle still is at King Von from the Wick. Basically, King Von and T-Roy loved their gang and they loved their block, holding it down with other Wick City members like Big A, OD, Trey 5, Platoon, Boss Money, Sharoid, Duke, who's actually been mentioned in numerous King Von lyrics, Ra Ra aka Reezy, and Boss Top, who also became a rapper like Keith. The Wick City BDs were very well known for throwing up GDK hand signs repeatedly to show the world that they were GD killers, who were very much indeed down to ride and kill.
GDK shit, man.
Everybody got the voice in their hand, man. You feel me? GDK. Broke boys.
So, who were the GD boys that these guys wanted to K so badly? Well, over on the STL EBT side, they were up against a few names who you might know if you're well versed in Chicago drill culture. The first to come to mind is Jakira Barnes, also known as Key or KI, a young female hitter who was good friends with fellow member Tooka growing up. Another member was FBG Butter, who along with KI were also known as a bit of a dynamic duo dubbed the Twins. Other members actually went by FBG or Flyboy Gang, an STL EB clique more focused on making music, which included other names like FBG Brick, and of course the legendary FBG Duck. Another musically inclined member who repped FBG was Lil J, who lived in STL and would later become more clicked up with them, but mainly had beef with 600 that kind of ran adjacent to this feud. They had Lil B and Wooski, who had actually been dubbed King of the Ops. There was Boss Trell and Lil Doc. On the 12th of January 2011, 15-year-old Shondale Gregory, known on the streets as Tooka, was waiting at a bus stop at the 600 block on East 63rd Street. At a certain point, a dark-coloured vehicle pops up and somebody hops out wearing a half mask. Some have said that this person exchanged a few words with Tooka, but ultimately within seconds they had shot Tooka multiple times and fled the scene. STL member FBG Duck was actually close friends with Tooka, saying that after hearing about his death, he actually ran to the scene of the crime, where in a tragic moment he even got to see his slain brother before he was taken away.
Me and him clicked, like that was one of my real close friends. Like every day, like spend the night at his house, he spend the night at mine. And my cousin came in there running to me crying and shit, telling me, your friend just got killed. You feel me? Then I ran all the way from 62nd and Wabash all the way to 63rd and St. Lawrence. Saved them right there on the floor. You know how that shit go, broke right down.
In response to this tragic loss, STL EBT would rename their hood Tookaville in his honor and as a commitment for revenge. And members like FBG Brick would rep Tooka's memory to the fullest.
Do you represent Tookaville?
Oh, to the fullest. That's what I do it for. That's what it's always been about since day one. Just Tooka. Like, my homie was 15 years old when he got killed. never hurt nobody, never did nothing, you know what I'm saying?
As you may well know, Tooka's name has been endlessly dragged in hip-hop over the years. Now, I'm not going to get into every instance or drama over this happening, but story goes initially the GDs from Tookaville, people like FBG Duck, were apparently saying that they were smoking Tooka out of respect for him, a nod to the old story that Tupac's crew, the Outlaws, smoked his ashes in a blunt after he died. But the BD ops from Wick City immediately decided to flip this and start making fun of Tookaville. The most immediate and iconic diss, of course, was Chief Keef's song 300, where he says "fuck Tooka gang," and from here other members continued the disrespect. One of Tooka's closest friends growing up was a young girl named K.I., but you might know her better as the young girl who became a teenage assassin, supposedly racking up 17 bodies by 17. Story goes it was the death of Tooka that actually turned K.I. into a cold-blooded killer. Apparently coached in shooting by her cousin, fellow Tookaville GD boss Trell, and maneuvering in the streets by her older brother Seaball, a bloodthirsty teenage K.I. would soon become a bona fide hitter for the Tookaville GDs.